Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, your guy is back for another year. I don't even know if I need to say who your guy is. I think our listeners know. Certainly your readers know.
My guy, Aaron Glenn.
Your guy, Aaron Glenn. Yeah, we'll see if he's back. But Ben Johnson's back. It helps soften the blow a little bit. It's funny. Can I just tell you a very super quick story, Carlos? I think this is representative of a lot of people, and I only talked to maybe 10 of them, but one of them was my youngest son, who put on the long view, the high road, whatever you want to call it, the happy face late Sunday night. I was out in California, and he's like, they had a great season. It was the best year of my life with any kind of team ever. This was incredible. And Monday morning, when I was getting ready to go to the airport or whatever it was, he texted me. He says, "Oh, this hurts. I'm not going to lie. I woke up this morning and this just hurts." And I felt that collectively. I saw that in my inbox. I'm talking to some other people who, for whatever reason, Monday was even more painful because they were trying to convince themselves Sunday night, saying, "Wow, what a great season. This was amazing," just to stem the pain. And then Monday was really hurtful. And then Tuesday, Carlos, Ben Johnson decides he's going to stay. And you can feel people pivoting a little bit. Oh, yeah, right. I mean, and you wrote about that. And in your column, which we should talk about a little bit, but what was your reaction? Your first reaction, and your second?
Yeah, that was exactly right. I mean, maybe Ben Johnson got stuff in his inbox, and that's what changed his mind too. But yeah, that's what happened. Is in the moment you're stunned. I mean, Shawn, I was an actual fan of teams, and I still am. So when my Kings or Dodgers get eliminated or whatever, like it's really painful in the moment, and then you wake up the next day. And you're like, it's real. Like it wasn't the euphoria of the game is over and all that stuff. And then the next day you're just left with like this void of nothingness for another year. So I totally get it. And it was true. I mean, people are, that whole thing, they're bargaining, right? And like, well, okay, maybe it'll be better and this and that. But I think the other shoe to drop was we're going to lose Ben Johnson. We're going to lose this amazing offensive play caller. I was talking to Taylor Decker in the locker room on Monday, and he was trying to give the kind of the kind of run of the mill answer of, oh, Ben's a really good coach, and if we lose him, it's going to be difficult, all that. And I'm like, and I kind of stopped him and said, he's different, isn't he? I mean, you've been here long enough. I've been here long enough. Like, he's a very unique play caller. And I reminded him, you called him a sicko one time because he was doing some razzle dazzle play. And he's like, yeah, he's special. He's different. And I don't know if we're going to see that again in our life. We, covering this team for so long, 20 years, whatever, been around Detroit, we haven't seen anybody of his caliber. And he made a big difference. And what was going to be interesting, Shawn, was we were going to test the hypothesis of whether it was,
the Petri dish. The Petri dish.
The Petri dish. Was it Ben Johnson or was it Dan Campbell? Who was he the puppet? Because I know you want to believe you love Dan Campbell. You love some Dan Campbell. You love to write about Dan Campbell and the zeitgeist and the
not just Dan
everything
Campbell.
Else. So we don't get to find out for at least another year.
No, we don't. And I don't want to say that's disappointing because obviously they're better with Ben Johnson. But no, I don't think it's just Dan Campbell. The one person I don't think gets enough credit. Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, Brad Holmes is every bit as much a part of this as Dan Campbell. Now, you can say, okay, Campbell's may end up being a really unique and not a generational coach, but just a Hall of Fame type coach. I don't know. But Brad Holmes, this doesn't happen without him. None of this happens without him.
Come on.
You've got to have talent. It starts with talent. And then you got to have a coach, no question. But it starts with talent. And Ben Johnson has talent. I remember you and I arguing about this a couple of years ago. You're like, well, what's it? And I'm like, dude, Amon Ross St. Brown is a future all pro at his position. And there are a couple of linemen that are headed that way, right? And so you can see that talent. You can see it. And it's not all Ben Johnson developing it. They are gifted. These are some Penei Sewell is an outlier, right? I mean, he's the best right tackle in the league. He's the most athletic offensive lineman in the league, period. I mean, they've got guys. Sam Laporta's a stud. They got guys. So to me, that's where it starts. That's where it starts. And then how do you put it together? How do you develop it? How do you meld it? All of that. But without talent, I feel like Brad Holmes gets lost in this a little bit. That's just me.
Well, okay, for you historians out there, Shawn, I know you're a historian. So Brad Holmes is George Marshall. Dan Campbell is Eisenhower, and Ben Johnson is Patton. George Marshall was the supply chain genius who got everything where it should be and the supplies and everything. Eisenhower had the strategy. He appointed the generals, but Patton was the guy on the boots on the ground, winning battles and leading the Allied forces. You don't just replace Patton. He's a talented, field general. That's what Ben Johnson is. Those guys are hard to find. Yes, you can find so everybody's important. Everybody is. And I think Brad Holmes gets plenty of credit now. I don't think he's the forgotten guy. Everybody knows, but you see this across the league. Guys like, Les Snead, right? They couldn't win before Sean McVay was there, and Sean McVay showed up, and he's kind of the Eisenhower and Patton because he calls the plays. And so that makes the difference. The guy sometimes is, and yes, Dan Campbell is a huge part of this. Of course, he's the most important part to me, because finding the right head coach is extremely difficult. You can have all the talent in the world, which doesn't know how to use it, how to develop it, how to, sustain it. Doesn't matter. You can throw 10 Tom Brady's at them and it's not going to matter. It's not going to be the GM's fault, but they only have so much say in this. They basically get the players that the coaches need is how it works. And then the coaches have to make do with that. That's why the GMs tend to survive a little longer usually, is because they're not the ones in the crosshairs. Like, hey, coach said he needed this and this and this. We got him. Whatever, didn't work out. Now, eventually you wear out your welcome like anybody else. But Ben Johnson, I really would, I'll be honest with you, Shawn, I would be curious if he left, what would happen? Who would they find? And that was a concern of mine, but it was going to be an interesting, time or era in Dan Campbell's tenure. I don't know. Is he ever going to leave now? What's going on?
No, who knows? And we could talk about him in a second, but let's get back to this fundamental idea. No, Bill Belichick, what happened when he lost the talent? What's his record since he lost the talent? Tom Brady goes to Tampa. So are you saying Bill Belichick Bruce Arians is a better coach than Bill Belichick or Todd Bowles? Absolutely not. But he got Tom Brady to go with obviously talented defense. That was a great defense they put together. Yeah, to me, if you don't have that, you got nothing. And it's not easy to find a good general manager. Well, who's the guy in Seattle who I remember looking up this last year because
Schneider.
I was thinking about, John Schneider. The run he had where he hit on 3 or 4 drafts in a row built a Super Bowl team. Pete Carroll's a really, really good coach. Great coach.
He's a Hall of Fame coach, yeah.
Great coach. But without Schneider making those moves, we're not talking about Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll went to New England, didn't have the same talent. Greg Popovich, the best basketball coach of the last 25 years.
Oh, I knew basketball. It was two examples and then basketball.
It's been, the first example is Bill Belichick, who is considered the best coach of this generation, right? Nick Saban, a fabulous coach, goes to Miami, doesn't have the talent, can't win.
No, he was just terrible, as though he didn't know how to deal with people. He was stepping over people having like heart attacks and things.
He had some other issues making the adjustment, but he didn't have enough talent. That's the key. It starts with there. And to think that it's easy to find a GM who can ID guys in the draft. Now, look, free agents, cap management, all that, those are all different skills, and you got people around you that's all got to be copacetic together. But if you can't draft, if you can't find guys that, you get some of it's luck. You and I've talked about this, and for sure, there's no way Holmes knew he was getting a first-team All-Pro in the 4th round when he drafted St. Brown. He probably thought he could be good, but you got to get lucky. But he's done it now a few years in a row, and to me, that's where it starts. I'm not saying he's the most important, but of any organization, you don't have the talent, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't.
Of course.
And to me, they're keeping when Ben Johnson leaves, who's still got the guy that identifies the talent, and they still got the guy that leads everything. So, and by the way, and you wrote this in your column, it was funny. You put it in there because you had to, because it's a fact. But the offense immediately changed when Dan Campbell took over. Immediately. And
who was his pass game coordinator?
Who was calling the plays? You keep talking about how big a deal it is to call the plays and the razzle dazzle and the sicko Decker. Decker's talking about his guts and his designs or whatever.
Well, those designs
cost him in the second half. Yeah, they did. His pass back, his third
perfect.
down,
and who gave him a 24/7 lead?
The offensive line were bullying and running over. Did you see the size of those holes? And did you hear what was going on in our press? But people were like, "Oh my God, the Lions are manhandling them."
Yeah, that's what they were designing those run plays. Do you think?
They're not that much to design. You can go zone, you can go man, whatever.
Ben Johnson, look at this disrespect.
They got the best running back tandem in the league behind arguably the best or second best offensive line in the league, and they came out and bullied them. That's what they did.
Yeah, Graham Glasgow and Coyote is Shota. They're the best offensive linemen in the league.
Are you kidding me?
Missing two of your guards, missing 40% of your starting line.
You got the best right tackle in the league, and you got a top 5 left tackle. And Graham Glasgow is a very good guard. You got 4 guys.
He's an average guard. Guard.
He's better than average. That's why they want him back.
I love Graham. He's a nice guy, but he's not better than average. Sorry.
Of course, he's a little better than average. That's why they want him back. Because he's a good. You think you all this talk about roster and developing more roster competition and how ruthless they've been with all that. You think they want somebody back?
He lost the starting job to Vaitai, but Vaitai was hurt.
No, he outplayed. You're right. No, but when Vaitai came back and was healthy, Glasgow outplayed him. That's fact.
Healthy.
Well, he did. He outplayed him. That's what I saw.
So Ben Johnson doesn't matter in your equation.
Not in the long run. No.
Oh,
it doesn't. Not in the long run.
Well, that's. I want to see what happens if he ever leaves. What your hypothesis how it plays out.
But the facts are there. As soon as Campbell took over the play calling, they got better. And by the way, who were they throwing the ball to that year? You know what I mean? St. Brown was still kind of developing. The talent got better too. There's no question.
Yeah, they did not have as much.
They didn't have the running game on the offense.
This is the first year.
No, for sure. And you're explain your piece of what you were trying to say about Campbell not wanting to throw Anthony Lynn under the rug. What is that? What did you expect him to do when he talked about why
I didn't say that? I just say he never gave us a good answer. Like I don't know why it didn't work out. That's not a good answer. So either you're not telling us the truth or you don't know. One of those has to be true. I don't know. Campbell's been pretty truthful in general. Since that's happened, that's never come out of why it was that it didn't work. If it was some problem between Lynn and Goff, or I don't know.
Yeah, there was something.
It's never been answered. There was
something there. Yeah, because Lynn is a solid coach, right? He he's a head coach. He had a really good year in what was it, San Diego at that point. Still, they weren't, or were they in Los Angeles? I can't remember.
Yeah, they were in L.A., but he did not do well there.
Well, they had a 12-win team and got to win a playoff game. He had a good solid year. When he took over in Buffalo, and even as a coordinator there, they were pretty good. He had Tyrod Taylor as his quarterback, but they had plenty of games. In other words, he's a solid coach. He's a decent coach. So I don't understand. It's understandable that he'd give him a chance, and it didn't work. And he changed it midway through and took over.
It was horrible. It was a disaster.
Yeah, no,
and he never explained why. The concerning thing is if you can't explain it, you have to assume he's telling you the truth, and he doesn't understand why it didn't work. That's the concern and he didn't see Ben Johnson right under his nose that, this guy's an offensive play calling genius.
What do you mean he didn't see him under his nose? He didn't know him that well. He was a tight ends coach. He was young, and he brought in an established guy. And as soon as it didn't work, he promoted him like halfway through the season.
He didn't promote him right away. He was his pass game coordinator, and then after the season, he got promoted. That's a promotion. And he wouldn't give him play calling duties. He wouldn't officially give him play calling duties until the season started.
Exactly, but because he did a really good job of calling the plays the year before, he promoted him from tight ends coach to pass. You're saying that's not a promotion?
It's a small promotion. It's not like, hey, we have a guy here. I worked with him long enough. I know what he's about. He's going to be interim offensive coordinator. That's to me saying I know that. Look, he doesn't. It's just a fact. He couldn't identify Ben Johnson's genius early. That's all. He thought this guy has potential. We'll see how it goes, but he was couching it. He wasn't sure, which just gives you some reason to wonder if he's going to be able to identify Ben Johnson's replacement, and someone who's going to be as successful as Ben Johnson.
Yeah, it's all the. First of all, we got to go back.
And by the way, he's got Aaron Glenn still on the staff. That's another issue.
Who's a good defensive coordinator who doesn't have anywhere near the defensive talent. Why do you keep throwing that, sweeping out?
He's below average. He's a below average.
How do you know that? He doesn't have
just look at the stats.
Near, look at the talent, the difference. It's huge.
Well, there's a chicken and the egg situation with this too. Is he getting the most out of his talent? Is Brad Holmes like, hey, your boy Brad Holmes is getting them players, and is he developing them? Is he using them the right way? Or is it that they're not good? So either Brad Holmes is screwing up and not getting enough talented players for him, or Aaron Glenn's not making proper use of the players he has.
How is he screwing up? He's got 3 years. You're trying to build a whole new roster. You can't just get everybody all at once. They leaned. They had
what
a couple
about the offense? You just said that the offense is, amazing.
And that's where he's primarily put. That's where they put the resources. He came into the team and said, "All right, what's the one strength? Well, we got we got a couple of really good offensive linemen. 3 of them, actually, if you include Jonah Jackson. Let's lean into that. Here's a stud out here, and we'll go from there. And then we're going to build out. Right? That's what they're trying to do. You can't do that all at once. You're not going to be able to do that all at once. He's absolutely."
By the way, one little aside about that is you love this offensive line. Ragnow, Taylor, Decker, and Jonah Jackson were already here, by the way. They were drafted by the previous regime.
That's what I just said.
He's added Penei Sewell, one guy.
No, and he brought Glasgow back. It was a nice fit. But that's what I just said. He came in and a roster that was more or less bereft said, here's the one area of strength. And then he doubled down and went and got Sewell, his first pick, and said, this is how we're going to build.
And his second pick was Levi and Wuzarike, and his third pick was Aleem McNeil. And then his fourth pick was Ifeatu. His next 3 picks,
both those guys have been really
defense.
good. Right?
It's not like he hasn't drafted defensive guys. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson has been the one, outright clear star that he's picked. But he's drafted defense. It's not like he hasn't gotten.
No, of course he has.
James Houston.
Of course he had. No, Houston was a late rounds fine for sure. He was hurt though. And they missed him this year. There's no question. They didn't have enough. That's one of the areas where they got to get better is the pass rush. Glenn started mixing it up, doing the blitzes and so forth. But yeah, no, personally, it's not going to shock me if Glenn's a better head coach down the road if he ever gets a chance. It's just not. Head coaching is completely different.
It is completely different. It is a different animal, and that's the thing. The questions that you hear rolling around about Ben Johnson is, can he manage an entire team, a whole staff, a bunch of players, a locker room, the assistants? Can he be? He's
got an edge to him, right?
He's got an edge to him, and
losing his temper. I don't want to say that. I want to disparage, but no, hey, we hear things. We
can be demanding. He can be demanding, is what we hear, and that doesn't always play. It depends on who you have, and But it might play in part of the room, right? Right, Carlos? It might play for part of the team. It might,
like it does right now, right? You know what I mean?
The thing about it is they always say the big cliche the coaches always lean on is be yourself, be yourself. Well, sometimes being yourself doesn't work. And Ben Johnson's a smart guy, and I'm sure one of the things he's learned from if it's one lesson you should learn from Dan Campbell and even Brad Holmes, but from Dan Campbell specifically, because he's the head coach, is identify the kind of team you want to be and the kind of players that are going to be on that team. The Dan Campbell, right, on the whole grit thing and whatever, and you're going to play hard. And I'm not going to go get guys who don't fit this locker room, don't fit this culture. And that's the one thing I would take is whatever that culture is that you want, whatever it is. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a grit culture, whatever you want it to be. Stay true to that. Find the people that you want. And by the way, Matt Patricia was trying to do the same thing. His requirement was so kind of far afield that it would have taken him way too long to clean out the whole locker room and get his kind of guys in there. But Ben Johnson, I hope he would. That's what I'm thinking he should take from any coach. Should stay true to that, is find out who you want to be and pursue that. And it might work better for Aaron Glenn. I mean, you're right. Aaron Glenn is, really beloved by his players, but that also doesn't. I mean, Anthony Lynn was a player. It doesn't always work. I mean, some of the
No,
great players or coaches haven't been players, so
no, it doesn't for sure.
It doesn't matter all the time.
No, but Glenn's not beloved in the way where it's kind of a fun-loving thing. I'm sure there's part of that too, but you can see it. He walks into the room, he commands the room, right? He's got a little bit of that Campbell in him, and we'll see. Who knows? I mean, it's hard to know.
He doesn't command the room.
What's that?
He doesn't command the room. Why does he command the room?
Of course he does. He walks in, he's got a presence about him. You can feel it. It's why it's part of the reason his players love it. I mean, that's part of the reason, and they don't just love him, they respect him. Right? I mean, Campbell talks about that with Glenn, that he's got that thing. And he does. Whether that is enough, who knows? I don't know. But yeah, that's why Campbell talks about it. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll continue this right after we make a little. Or what are we gonna do? We're gonna have we got some sponsors. We got something more important people than we are. We'll be right back with more.
Chan just wants a break. That's all. He
does more important for sure. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlson Show. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlson Shawn. All right, I think I figured out what we're debating here and what we're talking about. It's really kind of how you see life, see other people, and so forth. And tell me if I'm wrong here, Carls. You have some worry. I'm not sure why you're worried because you're not a fan. But anyway, you have some worry that Dan Campbell didn't see what Ben Johnson was capable of quickly enough. I look at it and say he saw it as soon as it presented itself and made a change. So we're looking at the same thing in a really, really different ways, and that's just a different way of looking at life, right? It's like when you and I were walking to a rental car the other night in San Francisco, Santa Clara, California, and from a distance, my rental car, I could see why you thought, oh, it's a luxury car. It was a Kia, and it was a base model Kia. But it wasn't obvious until you get in it and you start fidgeting around and realize you're trying to get comfortable in the seat. There's no power up to any of it. You got bars and levers and so on and so forth, and you're looking for the heated seats, which didn't exist, and all this sort of thing. And that's, to me, I mean, you got to get in the car and see what's going on and then figure it out. You can't just say, oh, that looks nice from the outside. You know what I mean? Dan Campbell needed to see what Ben Johnson was capable of. He thought enough of him, and I'm sure there's some film sessions and studies and conversations and all those sorts of things to say, hey, this guy can handle passing coordinator, and let's go from there. And then over the summer, he thought about it and gave him the play calling. To me, that's just a natural progression of seeing somebody and seeing something and believing in him. You, on the other hand, wanted him to give Ben Johnson the OC job the minute he got hired in Detroit. I mean, Dan Campbell got hired in Detroit. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Yeah, right.
What I'm saying is that you're probably right in that, it would take you some time to understand who this person is and whether they're capable of being the offensive play caller. Sure, he was, I believe that, he was already the tight ends coach when Campbell took the job. He was a holdover from the Patricia era. So are you going to promote this guy right away? It's your first time as a head coach. He's got his buddy, Anthony Lynn, who he worked with in Dallas, I think. And, so yeah, I wouldn't expect that off the bat. But after he's worked with them for about a year, all I'm saying is that Dan Campbell is not the personnel genius that maybe you want to anoint him as. And it took a little while to figure that out. Well, when he hires his next offensive coordinator, he's probably not going to, same thing. He's not going to have the luxury of waiting 2 years or a year and a half to figure out who his offensive coordinator is. He's got to go hire somebody, unless it's a proven commodity. It's almost impossible to hire a really good offensive coordinator who just happens to be on the market. So that's what the concern is who's he going to identify? How you don't have the luxury of, I'm going to get to know this guy and figure it out and whatever and promote him. He hedged his bets with Ben Johnson. I think that was one of the things too, was it was pretty obvious that Ben Johnson was going to call plays, because in training camp, he was calling plays. Dan Campbell didn't want to commit to that. I mean, and the reality of that was, the optics of, if it doesn't work out, with Ben Johnson, then he's got to take over play calling duties again. And then it's 2 straight years that you've basically demoted your offensive coordinator. And what are you doing? And by the way, you're coming off of however many wins it was the first year. And then, 3 wins the first year. And then, better second year, obviously. But, that's all I'm saying is he hasn't shown to be an amazing identifier of, coordinator talent so far, like early identifier of that. It's taken him a little while. Maybe that's just how it's going to go, but it's a concern next time he has to hire an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator. Even
I don't think it's a concern at all. I mean, you either get lucky with somebody or you don't. I just don't think it's that big of a concern. To me, he was nimble. He made a change midway through the season. Now, he took over and showed that he could call plays pretty well himself. And so maybe that's something he had in his back pocket. He spent the offseason really trying to debate that. I actually applaud that, taking the time and trying to figure it out. It wasn't that long overall. It was a season, a year. And then Ben Johnson takes over. I still contend that Aaron Glenn has, give him a little bit better talent. We'll see. Give him another, maybe a healthy Houston, and he needs a cornerback in the worst way. He is the number 1 quarterback. Those guys are hard to find, though. I mean, they're not that many of them in the league. It's like finding a lockdown corner is to some degree like finding a quarterback who can get out of the pocket and make plays, right? I mean, they're not that many of those guys either.
Well, Melifonwu was supposed to be a cornerback, and it didn't pan out, so he got moved to safety.
No, for sure. I don't know that he was ever drafted he wasn't drafted necessarily as a lockdown number 1 corner, but he was definitely drafted as a corner. And he's ended up, I mean, he's got a chance to be a really good safety, which he's long, he's rangy, he's got the corner speed, kind of. Maybe not the lockdown corner speed, but he's got corner speed. I know there are degrees to all that, but no, I just think it's. Look, Ben Johnson's obviously great, and I don't worry about that quite as much. I remember having a conversation with our colleague, as we like to call him, the great Dave Burkett, when early in the days of Kelvin Shepard, the linebackers coach, and Dave was kind of skeptical a little bit, and he had his reasons or whatever. Well, Shepard's turned into a pretty good coach. Maybe a good enough coach that he could become the next defensive coordinator. He's shown a lot. So I think that's where Campbell excels. This is my last point about Johnson and Campbell, because I want to hear your thoughts on why you thought he stayed. We need to talk about that. I actually, the other thing I thought about through this is that he kept Ben Johnson on the staff, despite the fact from a regime that had some, I'm not going to completely trash Patricia, but there were some toxic elements to it in the way Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia ran that building. And this is where you're right. Brad Holmes gets credit. Maybe the person who gets the least amount of credit who gets more is Sheila Hamp. And she wanted a flushing of all that. So Campbell kept a guy from his staff. He thought about enough of them that kept a guy from his staff where the owner of the franchise is like, we need a complete cultural reset here. But Campbell saw something in him and said, hey, he wasn't part of that. You know what I mean? So I thought that was, to me, that's a good sign. Now maybe you're right. Maybe nobody else turns out to be quite the clever play caller that he is, and the rhythm play caller and the feel and all that. And he's great at it. Really, he's elite at it. But in terms of, does this person fit? Is this the right personality? Because that all matters too. He clearly saw something.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. He kept him. He kept Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach. So you don't necessarily throw everybody out.
No, you don't. You don't.
He was, obviously with TJ Hawkinson, I don't know if he'd made a Pro Bowl yet, but, you have to interview everybody. And it was a good move on Dan Campbell to not like, hey, you're all out. You're all garbage. You're all whatever, clean house. And it is good that, Sheila did give him the latitude to you pick who you want. If you want to keep half the guys, that's okay. You do what you need to do. So it's a credit that they didn't just, for optics sake, totally clean house and possibly lose some good coaches like, Fraley and Ben Johnson. So yeah, smart, good.
Do you think he'd take Fraley if Ben Johnson does go? Do you think he was taking Fraley too?
When we were in the locker room on Monday, we were kind of sort of asking about Ben Johnson, but more than that, we were assuming he was gone. And the next thing was, and does, Hank go with him? And I think that was the thing where where more of the guys were scared, especially the offensive linemen.
Yeah, right.
Because he's been such a great coach and helped them. And, he's tricked you into thinking that Graham Glasgow is an elite right guard in the NFL for some reason. But
he's not elite. He's not elite. He's just good.
He's just good. He's really good. And so, yeah, that's everybody was just assuming that was going to happen and he'd be his offensive coordinator in Washington. So, yeah, I don't know. I would assume all bets are off now. I mean, who knows? And I mean, poor Hank Fraley probably thought he was getting an OC job in Washington. And now it's like, well, I guess we're coming back to Detroit for another year. So, yeah, that's
funny. It's like Harbaugh taking it's no secret that Ben Herbert, the strength and conditioning coach, right, for Michigan, is a big, big part of their development and the reason they were really good. Same with Jesse Minter, who is a elite college level defensive coordinator and is going to get a shot. I mean, obviously, right. He showed some things. He was part of the Baltimore coaching tree under John Harbaugh, and Harbaugh's taking him. So yeah, it's often not just one you lose, right? There's a domino.
I can't believe he's taking Jay Harbaugh. He's like Jay Harbaugh too. How did he convince him to go?
Yeah, no, that's a tricky one. All right, so let's step into Ben Johnson's shoes if you can. Leave Carlos behind. I love Carlos. Carlos is not a hothead, but I would take Carlos over Ben Johnson any day of the week. But let's step into his shoes as much as you can, and tell me what do you think? Why do you think he stayed?
Money. I think that at the end of the day, he wanted a lot, upwards of probably around the neighborhood or upwards of 15 million, which we believe is a lot for a first-time head coach. That was the number one thing, I'm guessing. And then also other little things of roster control. If you're going to Washington, they have the number 2 overall pick. Was he going to be guaranteed that he could pick the quarterback that he wanted? Did he maybe want to try to somehow trade up and get Caleb Williams from USC? And they were like, we're not sure we're comfortable with that. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of different moving parts to being a head coach. And, if I think he feels that he has earned the right as the hottest coaching candidate on the market to dictate his terms. And unless all my things are in line, I'm not going to settle. And that's good for him. Know your value. And he's young. He's 37, I think it is.
37, yeah.
37, and he has time. I don't think he feels like his play calling is going to get any worse. And if he comes back to the Lions, they're going to make a Super Bowl run. They'll be one of the favorites to get to the Super Bowl next year. So he'll have another shot at it next year. And I was talking to Dave Burkett about this, and I think he said he's interviewed with 8 teams, right?
I know. At least 7,
and that's a little bit of a concern, but it also, because maybe he's burning some bridges there, wearing out his welcome. Like, are you really serious about this or whatever? Owners don't like to look or feel stupid. Like, am I wasting my time pursuing this guy, or is he serious? But it shows you also they're going to keep coming back. I mean, there's so much. I don't know how many coaches got fired, but it seems every year more coaches get fired. The patience is really thin on ownership side these days. They want to win and win now. And so you don't find these guys often, these offensive geniuses. And I mean, and I know we can disagree on this, but I think most people look at this, football people, like, yes, Dan Campbell, great, whatever. But also they kind of write off Dan Campbell because we're not getting Dan Campbell. He's going to be a Lion for life if he wants to. Who can we get from that staff? And it's kind of like the Patriots was Josh McDaniels for a while. It's like who
was considered a genius, by the way.
Yeah, and it's like who can we get from this meteoric rise that has turned the tide of the Lions and offensive play callers, and also in the NFL offensive play callers at a much higher premium than defensive play callers. So that's he knows that his value is going to stay high. So there was something, I'm guessing at the top of the list, it was money. And then below that, I think it was other things that he wanted, assurances or whatever it was about roster control or what have you. But money, I would say, had to be the top thing. And you know what? If teams don't feel like, hey, that's just too much. Sorry, we're not comfortable with that. He's like, all right, see you. Thanks. We'll move on. See you. Talk to somebody else next year. And by the way,
Yeah,
my
money-
price will be higher next year if if you're still interested.
Well, the market just goes up anyway, all of it, right? So
Yeah, true.
yeah, no, it's interesting to think about. Last year I felt, and he said this whether you believe or not. Last year it felt more like he got out there and some part of him realized, I don't know that he talked about wanting to come back and see the thing and whatever. And I'm sure that was a small
Unfinished
part of it.
business.
Yeah, whatever. And that's obviously, you feel a connection. You in the building every day, you care about the people, unless you're a sociopath. I assume he's not. So I'm sure that was a small part of it. I thought last year was more about him, some self-awareness. Like, am I quite ready for this? This year, I'm with you. He's ready, and he probably thinks he's ready. I don't think that was it. I think last year that was the main thing for him. This year, yeah, I would say money and to your point, circumstances, and those kind of go hand in hand if you think about it, right? I guess you're guaranteed the contract, but you want the money, but you want a chance to succeed. You don't
Sure.
want just 1-2 year stint and then that's it. And okay, fine, you got a guaranteed 3 or 4 year contract, whatever, but you're never going to coach again as a head coach. So I think that other thing is just as important, because if you're thinking about money too, that's you want a chance at a second contract, right?
Yeah, I don't know that coaches think that way. They just think it's going to work out and whatever. And, it's not like they have a limited time like players do to get that second contract and injury, whatever. But
it's the perception. It's the perception, right? It's limited in terms of the perception. You can get not tasked. What's the word, Carlos? Branded certain way, and that's it. So
true.
It is a limited time. It's not because of physical injury. It's almost like emotional injury.
It is, and the thing that unless you do something, super egregious, if it just doesn't work out, I think Ben Johnson knows that if he went to wherever, Washington, and got the job, and in 3 years they flame out, just a disaster or whatever, they just don't succeed on the field. But if he doesn't do weird things, get accused of abuse in any way or whatever, or mismanagement, if he just doesn't win on the field, he goes back to being a coordinator. And in another year or two of, I'm sure, being a very successful coordinator again, they're going to be knocking on his door. So I think someone like Ben Johnson, to me, unless things change, the game changes, whatever, it passes them by or whatever, but I think that he's one of these guys that he's going to get opportunities in the future, even if he's not successful his first time. Pete Carroll wasn't very successful his first time in New England, goes to college, lights it up, and then he becomes a Hall of Fame NFL coach.
And what's the key about Pete Carroll, right? And this is what we don't know about Ben Johnson.
People.
Exactly. Josh McDaniels, right? Who was the offensive genius of his era, coming off of Belichick stuff. I remember when Charlie Weiss came out, and that man was so. Do you remember what he said when he was going to Notre Dame? Like he was going to bring a level of sophistication unseen before in college football, and
he said we'll have a schematic advantage over everybody.
Exactly. I mean, he was a genius at his time. So yeah, that's great. But at some point, that doesn't matter if you cannot connect. And I'm not saying Ben Johnson can't, but to your point earlier when we started talking, that if he doesn't take that from Campbell, look, he's not going to be able to replicate Campbell. You can't. Of
course not.
But
nobody can.
But you can learn. But no, right? No, but you can learn some things. You know what I mean? It's like Chuck Daly. Sorry about basketball, but when I think about if Campbell ends up winning a Super Bowl and whatever, I mean, to me, you go. Jim Leland was beloved, but it was Chuck Daly. He's tough. He was good schematically. And he was just this unique guy that everybody respected, and he motivated everybody just by his sheer. And Campbell's like that, only in a bigger sport.
Yeah, Scotty Bowman won a lot through fear, so maybe you can do it another way. That was a different era, of course.
It was a different era, but in any case, I'm with you. Oh, go ahead.
Bill Belichick was not Mr. Warm and Fuzzy, right? I mean, you don't have to do it. There's not just one way.
No, but he was warm and fuzzier behind the scenes. I read story after story after story that what he presented on Sundays after the games is not how he was 24/7 during the week. That he was fuzzy, like that some
wrong words.
No, but that he could smile here and there, and that he lightened up here and there some.
I mean, he cared about his players, and no question. But warm and fuzzy.
No, he's not warm and fuzzy for sure. But in any case, all right, I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. We'll see about what Campbell's got in his bag down the road. But for now, yeah, it's great.
How far do you expect them to get this year then? If they keep everybody, if they keep most, the coordinators, both coordinators, what do you think? How far?
I mean, do they get? I mean, you wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. That they're a player or two away from losing in the wild card. They got a break, and you got to get in a position to get a break, and that's the key. Can they get in a position to get another break? Absolutely. But then do they get to the break? Did they get to the break? I don't know. They didn't get a break in San Francisco. The ball bounces off a face mask and goes into the hands of a diving receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs runs the wrong way on a fumble, whatever. That's not getting a break. So I don't know. I think they can put themselves back in a position to try to get the break, because you got to get the break.
So your answer is you don't know how far. What's your guess? What do you think? How far?
I think they'll
they win another playoff game. Do they get the number one seed? Assuming
that they figure out the offensive line. I mean, it starts with that. Is Ragnow going to be able to stay healthy? They got to figure out Jonah Jackson. Do they bring him back or not? He's had some health struggles, obviously. To me, if they can be close to what they were on the offensive line, and then they can build that defense out a little bit, not a whole lot, but just a little bit, then absolutely, yeah, they'll be good enough to get to a Super Bowl again, for sure.
Yeah, how about you? I think to me the bar is NFC title game and number one seed. Depending, because it looks like Philadelphia and San Francisco is still going to be pretty damn good, but I think we need to expect them to challenge for the number one seed in the NFC and get to the NFC. The bar, the minimum is the NFC title game again.
Yeah, and I don't
minimum.
see. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's. And then you're going to get the luck of the bounce, whether you get there or not,
sure.
Right? I mean, that's
anything.
Just,
yeah. I mean, San Francisco almost lost their opener to Green Bay.
Exactly. Because, you get a hot team coming in and start to feel it. So, yeah, it's hard. You and I talk about this all the time. It is hard to win, especially in the playoffs, right? I mean, we saw Campbell's viral video. Do you guys understand what you're doing? Do you know how hard this is, right? I mean, Tampa comes in at high, right? I mean, they gave a game anyway.
Absolutely.
I'm with you, man. They should be in the number one seed should be on the table, but you got to stay healthy for that. Some things. Look at Philly. They start off 10-1 or whatever, and just I don't know what happened there, but I don't see that happening here unless golf goes down or something.
Yeah.
So in any case, all right, good stuff. Good food for thought, Carlos, as always. Should I qualify that?
You go first. Go first on your favorite thing, Shawn. You've been itching.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. It's time for the favorite thing, and then we'll get you out of here. Oh, going to In-N-Out at 12:30 with you in San Francisco. After the game, you are a California boy and a fella and man of the world. But California's your state and your home.
You said I grew up in Phoenix, but sure.
And you grew up with In-N-Out. And it's part of what's in your.
I grew up about 10 minutes from the original In-N-Out store in Baldwin Park.
There you go. So it's in your soul, and I've heard you talk about it for years. And obviously I don't know what the first time I tried In-N-Out, probably 20 years ago, but it was fun to have one with you late at night. After a long night, a few months. So I enjoyed just to sit there with you and share a meal. That was my favorite thing for sure.
What did you order?
I ordered a double cheeseburger with grilled onion and raw onion.
God, it's not a double. It's a double. It's the most famous after the Big Mac. Double.
Double.
The Whopper is probably the second, but okay.
But I told them I'd like a double. I just said I'd like a double.
And what did they tell you about the onions, by the way?
Oh, they said, hey, you can get both. And they were right. You can get grilled and raw. The guy said, hey, let me help you out. Let me make a little suggestion. I'm like, it was awesome. So that's what I got. No fries. And I'm sorry, ashamed to admit, a chocolate shake. I love their chocolate shakes.
They're great. They make it with real ice cream. So pro tip, this is part of my favorite thing too, is the In-N-Out meal. That was absolutely just a nice little thing to look. We talked about it. Like, we're going to go to In-N-Out on the way back. It was right by our hotel. And I was looking forward to that the whole game. And it was like, oh man, this is kind of 11 p.m. is kind of late to be eating In-N-Out, but this is our one chance. And pro tip for the listener out there, they'll do anything you want if you go to In-N-Out. You tell them to, give you half a bun and toast half and whatever. Obviously, if you get animal style, there's pickles. They don't usually advertise that they have pickles and mustard, but you can have that on there. You can ask for extra sauce. The fries, by the way, ask them for well done, because people complain the fries are a little bit soggy. Ask them for fries well done, and they'll cook them a little bit longer. And then Shawn is wrong. You get the Neapolitan shake. That's chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry all in one shake. And it's amazing. But my favorite thing, Shawn, was this whole season, the Lions season. It was, as somebody who covered the 0-16 season in empty ghost town-like press box. Back then, by the way, at Ford Field, the beat writers sat separately, like at the 50-yard line where it's now a coach's box. And just everybody else who wasn't a beat writer sat on press row, closer to like the 30, 40-yard line. And so when the team wasn't doing well, very few people were showing up on the, press row. It was depressing. And to see how they've come so far, it's been a long time. It's taken a while, but to see this run to, going to Green Bay, we split up the road trips, but it was, Green Bay and New Orleans was a fun time. And that was a good trip. And you got to go to Dallas, and I got to go to LA to talk to Matthew Stafford and go to the Chargers game. And it was just it was a long season. It wears you down week after week of covering in and traveling, going to the games. And, you cover college. I barely cover college games, or didn't at all this year, but that's especially taxing on the writers too, the columnists, going from one to the next, Saturday to Sunday, especially when there's travel involved. But it was just a fantastic ride. It was really enjoyable. I got to reach out to a lot of fans. Some of them, become friends, acquaintances, and getting to enjoy it vicariously kind of through them. I'm not a fan, but I appreciate their journey and hearing them talk about it, the excitement that we all had about it, whether it was covering big games or enjoying it as a fan or watching it on TV. So it was a really, really fun journey. I think someone said this, you only go through this once, there's a rise to prominence. You only experience it. Nothing
unique.
Yeah, there you go. Great pearls of wisdom as usual from you. And the first time, it only is one time. So next year, I think would be still really cool to see them do well. I would expect them to do well.
But there'll be expectation, right?
It was a fun.
There'll be expectation, and that changes it.
There'll be huge expectations, and that'll be its own thing.
And that changes it, doesn't it?
Yeah. But it was a fun ride. I think you agree with that.
No, for sure.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing the whole season.
And I enjoyed doing it with you. That was the most fun part. We usually get to sit together. We do it at the home games for sure. And I always enjoy that. It's fun to watch games with you. So we got to go through the ride together, and then obviously do this podcast. We've been doing the extra podcast all season. So that was the post-game podcast of the Lions. So obviously that'll get put on hold for a while. But
Robin says we're going to do Road to the Playoffs, but Red Wings edition now. So after every Red Wings game,
we'll do like a 10-minute deal or something. Yeah, that'd be fine. Or why the Pistons are winning now that Kate Cunningham's not playing. Yeah, we could do podcasts on that too. No, I'm kidding. They got to figure that out. Anyway, yeah, we got lots to get into as we move off of football season. Although we're still going to have plenty of football, right? We got potentially maybe some coaching changes. We'll see what happens with Aaron Glenn. And we got the draft. That'll be here for right, Carlos? And then all of a sudden it's rookie mini camp. And, oh, boy, yeah. So it's not going to be as long as you think, is it?
And the combine. It's all getting hot and heavy. Senior Bowl, combine. It doesn't stop.
It doesn't. All right, it's been a pleasure, my brother. Good to share this historic season. It was a historic season. We can say that. Even though it didn't end in the Super Bowl, it was still a historic season. And I'm with you. The ride was amazing. It was great to share with you. That was my privilege.
Absolutely.
All right, my man. Let's get out of here. The readers.
Let's thank Robin Chan, our intrepid producer, who puts up with all our shenanigans, especially this season. There's a lot. He worked. Poor Robin had to wait for us after the game to do these wrap ups, and especially like when we're in California time and it's midnight his time, and the poor guy's got to stay up late. So, pour one out for Robin. He's been a trooper. But also, our executive producers who take all the credit but don't do any of the work, Anjanette Delgado and Kirkland Crawford. But the person who signs the checks, who I can't, malign at all, is Nicole Avery. Nichols, who's given us our support for the whole season and has made this possible and been very patient. But Shawn,
and
who is the most important?
Well, and by the way, you're going to thank Nicole for taking away the comments on our stories. Although I know you secretly loved.
Oh yeah, I haven't heard anything about that. But anyway, who do we really need to thank?
Loved comments. Oh, you, the listener, of course. I mean, I want to thank you.
I love their comments.
I want to thank you too, Carlos. But yeah, no, we want to thank the listener. You can find us obviously wherever you find your favorite podcast. The most important thing is to subscribe, rate us, let us know what you think, and then keep coming back. Because we'll be back next week, I would imagine, with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.